Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. You are in the zone. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter, MV Pete Coles, and it is cold outside, folks. It is fria joia, as my daughter says.
I say frio.
It has certainly hit the bottom of the bell here, and it's certainly making life a little difficult out here in Massachusetts, but we are right back in the nice, warm studio to bring you lots of hoops, folks. We're probably, I would say, at the midway point of the season right now in both areas. You're approaching the All-Star break for the NBA, and college basketball's right about in the middle of it, coming out of that break that everybody has for Christmas, New Year break. A couple of teams playing in between there, but you got that break, and then when you come out of it, I always said as a coach, once you hit Martin Luther King Day, it's over. Once it hits Martin Luther King Day, it's over. It also, at that moment, is when all of your students return to campus. So it reinvigorates the campus, it revibrates the campus, and that's a pretty cool time. As I said right now, for our gentlemen and for a lot of the guys who play basketball, everybody thinks it's really glamorous, but right now they're having 2 sessions a day in the middle of January, and they're trudging back and forth to the gym and getting out of bed and doing all this stuff, and they're not eating the best food because the usual fare isn't there. So that's just a little bit of it. Before we get off to our start in Pete's Corner, there was just one quick item of business I wanted to say. What a debt of gratitude we owe to our zoners, the people who watch our show. Unbelievable. Mea culpa. You're the ones who make us go and get us in here in every week. And Pete and I love doing this, but we really do thank you. We're appreciative, and we want you to know that. Debt of gratitude to all of our watchers and listeners. Also, great debt of gratitude to Bob Beretta last week, the athletic director at St. Bonaventure. We had a great conversation. I thought it was a good interview. We've had some really good guests, and we're going to keep that rolling for you as we get into the season. But right now, new segment that we've taken on here, Pete's Corner, and it's hot. People like it, and we go with 3 shots. Pete's got 3 shots from deep, and here he goes. Pete's three-pointer of the day, number 1.
All right, so I watched little NBA hoops yesterday. Has defensive rebounding become a bad word or a thing of the past?
So that's a really good question. And what you have is it's almost limited now to 1 or 2 players on the team who do all of the rebounding. And so what happens also is, if you follow this stuff pretty closely, and I do, and as much as I follow it, I still don't know the whole thing that's going on here. I can't get my arms around all of it. But I think somebody in the NBA executive offices told their people upstairs that it would be better when they implemented the 24-second clock, when they made the game exponentially faster. So what you have now are people who measure what are the amount of seconds per possession in the NBA. And so it's gone from 12 seconds on a 24-second clock. That's about 50% of your allotted clock. It's gone all the way down to 9. 8 and 9 seconds. That's how fast the ball's going in the air. And so when you're seeing all of this leaking, it's what we used to call leaking out, cherry picking. Guys who just have no function to rebound whatsoever, they're the guys trying to get up the floor and score the ball. They're the guys who are leaking out, cherry picking, getting into that lane because they know now we have the ball, we're going to move a lot quicker, and then I get to score. Okay? If you want to know how to kind of evaluate players, okay, the best way for me, as I always look, is to evaluate the differential between how fast they run on defense and how fast they go on offense, okay? You have guys on offense, they take off like Usain Bolt. They're flying out of there. We got the ball. Hallelujah. I get to score. Here we go. They miss a shot. Now you got to come back the other way, and it looks like they're running uphill in the Himalayas. So that's how I judge whether you've got a really good player or not. That good player, a really good player, will change the court at both speeds. They'll change the court at a consistent speed. But the defensive rebounding also is problematic because you're not playing defense. And so there's this assault on the paint, at the rim, all of the things that we teach in defense. Keep them out. Keep them outside the paint. Keep them away from the rim. The way the NBA's defense is porous now, One of the ancillary effects of that is it places more stress on your rebounding because you're all out of position and nobody has a good body to match up to block out. And so it's one of these things that, which the depth of your question is really, really good because you're talking about one thing that can create a lot of problems. Yeah. And so if your defensive rebounding isn't there, you're giving up second shots. Second shots are made at a clip much higher than first shots. That's at least been my experience. And so a lot of times those second shots are also in and around close to the basket because they've been offensive rebounded. So,
but that takes a lot of excitement out of the game too. The second shots are what people watch for.
It does. And what it does is the floor is so spaced right now that nobody really is around the basket. The offensive team isn't close to the basket anymore. And so it also made defensive rebounding a little bit of an anomaly because nobody really crashes the offensive glass like they used to either. They're all spread out by the three-point line, so they can't even get into rebound. So it doesn't really place enough duress on the defense to really have to go and rebound. So what you're doing is just falling into the hands of the biggest player, out on the floor, whether they're a great rebounder or not. Anthony Davis, the Lakers, the ball just falls into his hands because everybody else is gone. Everybody else is out on the break trying to score. That's a great question, Pete. Great question. Rebounding is oxygen to your basketball team. If you don't do it, you're as good as dead. If you don't place it as a priority, I learned a long time ago, your teams will be good at what you emphasize. Whatever it is that you're emphasizing, that's what your teams will be good at. And if you're emphasizing rebounding, you're going to limit a lot. You're going to limit second shots. You're going to keep your core defense a lot better, and it's going to make for a lot easier time. And keep the real joy of it is for coaches. It also keeps your guys out of foul trouble because a lot of times fouls are picked up after the positioning is lost, after we've created that gap where now the defense is broken, they're in the paint, and now we're in trouble. So those rotations and everything that go with it only hurt your rebounding. It only hurts your positioning. So it's one of those questions, Pete, that you asked that, like I said, has a lot of layers. It's like an onion. And the more you peel it, the more you find out that everything in basketball is related.
So
Shot two.
I watched more of this game, and what I've noticed is that guys had clear shots on the lane, and they didn't take it. Like they faked like they were going to the lane. They didn't take it, and then they automatically kicked it out for a three-point try, and it was a one and done.
Yeah, it's now so entrenched in the game that I made this post, and I said it on the show a little while ago. Steph Curry's not the problem. It's the fact that everybody else thinks they're Steph Curry. That's the problem. And so now you have all of these guys who don't shoot it as well as Steph Curry attempting the same shots. That'd be like me attempting a Greg Louganis dive, and I'm going to go up on the top of this high diving board and I'm going to perform a triple loop whirl, whatever it is they do, and I'm going to crash my head on the pool, which is what you're seeing right now with all of this three-point shooting. Over 100 attempts in a game. And they just don't understand. People don't want to watch that. People don't want to watch it. It was, at one time, an exciting part of the game. It also allows for leads to be more susceptible. Years ago in the NBA, a 20, 25-point lead was untouchable. Now you have the three-point shot. I was at a high school game not long ago. The team was down by 25 points. I considered leaving the game because my guy was winning so much, and I was, would have been like to sit through that. The other team came all the way back, bombing threes, and won the game, down by 25. So right now it's very, very volatile. So you basically have a situation where the floor is very spread. You have everybody taking three-pointers. And what that also causes is there's another causal effect here that from a coaching perspective, I talk to my defense about this all the time. Long three-point shots that don't go in have a tendency to hit the rim and rebound long, which then means most likely one of their guards rebounded the ball, which makes their fast break without an outlet pass exponentially faster. And so there's so many things that go on here, so many things that are tied together. When you have a good team, they really understand those things. When you have a team that doesn't understand those things, it's really tough to coach them. You had Mick Cronin on TV the other day, head coach at UCLA, and it was one of the I would say maybe it was a very honest press conference, but it was a little bit like Patino a couple of years back, where you just don't go out and slay your team publicly like that.
Right.
But he went out and really hit hard and went after them. I'm interested to see what happens with the rest of their group. He basically called his team delusional. And he said, I'm the guy with the highest energy level in the gym every single day, and nobody matches my energy level.
Wow.
And he basically said, I'm dealing with guys who are delusional, and it's very difficult to coach players that are delusional. Probably not a good thing to say publicly, but I think that's what's on everybody's mind right now.
Well,
so
that could be the reason we're getting the coaching exodus too, because these kids think that they're, because they're getting paid the amount of money they're getting paid nowadays, they don't have to try as hard as they used to. There isn't that carrot of the NBA contract because they're getting theirs.
And you had an incident at Auburn where they had to turn their plane around. You're going to see more and more of that, Pete. You're going to see more and more of that. You're going to walk into a situation one day, everybody's going to look up and go, how did we get here? And then we'll say, go back and watch all the episodes of In the Zone, and they'll tell you how we got here. Well, they laid it out brick by brick for you, and we knew it was coming because there's no way you can conduct this thing the way they're doing it. Let me give you an example. I posted this thing was posted on TV, social media, Facebook, one of these places, and it said that VCU, who's a member of the Atlantic 10, has now jumped into the revenue stream of the Atlantic 10 and will now pay each player $385,000 a year.
Holy cow.
Each player. Now, that's a $6 million budget. Now, what I found out in a little bit of the research that I did was that not every A-10 team is a revenue stream team, which means they won't get the $6 million to disperse. They'll have to go to their collective, which is their NIL fundraising arm, and make the $6 million that way.
How do they not get the revenue stream?
That's what I'm still trying to find out, Pete. I was shocked when I heard that. So you got teams in the A-10 that are going to be using a $6 million budget, and you have teams in the A-10 that are going to have to, if they have anything near that, it will have to be raised annually. Annually. It's unbelievable what's going on right now, Pete. Okay, let's go shot 3, Pete.
All right, shot number 3 in the college ranks. How do you get your players ready for the second half? I know you talked about double sessions and really concentrating on what you're doing, but how do you get their energy back ramped up after they've had the distractions of break?
That's a good question, and I don't know. I just do the same stuff I do, and you get different results every time. I will say this. If you have situations on your team where some of your players go home to a home life that's not optimal, they're going to have a little bit more difficult time assimilating coming back. I see that with a lot of the players that I know come from a little bit of more of a disadvantaged background than some of the other players on my team. So when they first come back after being gone from 16 days, being back in the environment that's not most conducive, then you see it's a little bit more difficult to bring them back out of that. And as you're heading into now league season, it's that little hiccup that you have to really manage as a coach if you want to do well. You got to really hold it all together. And so for me, that's become very, very challenging. But I think I'm trying to approach that with more of an open heart these days to try and get to the underlying circumstances that are there that are causing some of the reactions that we just see. All you do is see the reaction. That's like looking at an apple on a tree. You don't know what's in the root. You don't know what's in the tree. You don't know what's in the core of the tree. You don't know anything about that. And I say that once you see that little end episode, let's say, where all of us like to stop and stare and go, WTF, that was layered many, many, many years before that. That was layered and predictable from almost the jump. And it's sad, and it's one of those things I hope as a coach that I've gotten better at, is to be a little bit more empathetic in that situation, not to bend over backwards or be easy, but to be empathetic about not everybody starts on first base, man. It's just not the same thing. I got to deal with 15 different personalities, and I got to be able to deal with them cohesively and in a way that's cogent to them. And not every one of those is the same story. You might be able to take a group of your guys and go, okay, they're all good. You got them. And then you have a group of guys on your team you know that are going to need that extra little care, that extra little bit of mentoring, that extra little bump. And that's where you spend your time as a coach. People talk about relationships all the time, Pete, in coaching. That's what they're talking about. Yep. You know, your dad passed away a year ago, and this is the anniversary of it. That's why you got a technical today. You know, trying to draw those things often is where you can meet some resolutions. You know, you can make some solutions there, you know, and that's what I've always been driven towards as a coach. We can stare and look at the problems all we want, and we can say that they're terrible and they're horrible, and a lot of times they are. But it's so much more productive to roll up your sleeves and be a part of the solution. Because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Pete, let's roll to the Power 15 of the NBA. A lot of shaking going on there, Pete. Whole lot of shaking going on. There was a matchup that I've been waiting for a long time now, because this is an East-West Coast matchup that you don't see that often. NBA teams will play most teams in their conference, step outside to their divisions, outside of all of that, and then they cross over to the West Coast on those West Coast trips that everybody hates, or those East Coast trips that everybody hates and takes, and are very, very challenging for your team. So OKC Thunder had to come to Cleveland the other day, and the Cavaliers came out and really played well and came out victorious. So you're looking at a 36-game cohort for the Cavaliers. They have 4 losses.
Blows my mind.
They're the new Celtics, folks.
Yeah.
Right now, this is the lead the Celtics had last year. This is the dominance that the Celtics provided last year. Now a baseline question, can the Cavaliers sustain it? Can they keep it going? We're not even at the All-Star break right now. But when you look at 32-4, and the way that they handled OKC the other night, they took care of business pretty good there. This team's a lot better than anybody thought they would be. OKC Thunder in number 2, Pete, 30-6. Celtics in the 3-hole, but there's a good bit of gap here. The Thunder, despite the injury to Holmgren, have been able to hold on. The Celtics have had some problems. The Celtics have 10 losses right now. I don't know. They've taken on more home losses than they had for the entire year last year. And now you're into the 10-loss range and dipping below the Cavaliers, you know, with 6 in the loss column. That's a little bit bigger than people think. Okay, Houston Rockets, 24-12, another baseline story. Another really, really good story. Ime Udoka jammed up in the Celtics, got another chance, went to Houston. They've got a really, really good team and a young team, and they have some pieces on that team. They're going to be good. Memphis Grizzlies, 24-13. Ja Morant suspension last year really left this team reeling. Now they're back. Got Zach Edey in the middle. They've filled in some pieces. They have a pretty good team. I'm interested to watch this team in the playoffs. The Knicks were the hottest team in the NBA, and now they've turned into one of the coldest teams in the NBA, and that's just life in the NBA. Right now, they had lost Brunson. They had lost, now they have Big Cat out, and you saw the same thing with the Celtics. Right now, it's the teams that are able to sustain their injuries that are doing the best. Orlando Magic have had a number of injuries. They're sustaining, though. They're still staying in that mix despite being ravaged with injuries. So the Knicks right now are in that little knick-knack, paddywhack, give the dog a bone. The Celtics have had some of that. We'll see what the Knicks can do with it. But right now they've turned in from playing great basketball, and they've struggled as of recent. Denver Nuggets, 20-15. In the 7th spot, not bad. Russell Westbrook's been playing pretty good for them lately. I know a lot of people are crazy about him, and I think maybe, like James Harden, he might be one of the most misunderstood guys in the game. It's one of those things where you look at him and you say, oh, you know, he's a head case, he's a this, he's that. Easy to label, but I really like his game, and I think he could provide Denver something going down the stretch here. Orlando Magic, this is the team we just talked about, Pete. They're a baseline team, 22-16, and they've had a lot of injuries. Banchero has been out. They have a lot of different injuries going on, and they're sustaining. Very well coached, by the way, as well. Dallas Mavericks, 21-16. They had Luka go out. Now Kyrie is out, and Kyrie looks like he might be out for a little bit of time. So keep an eye on the Mavericks right now and see if they can sustain. Maybe the trade where they brought in Klay Thompson will now pay a little bit of dividend as he can pick up some of Kyrie's scoring load deficit. So we got the Lakers and the Clippers, boom, boom, right on top of each other. The Lakers are maybe, as a baseline story this year, the Lakers might be the most up and down team I've seen all year. They look great sometimes, and then they look absolutely awful at others. Sometimes they show like they have good enthusiasm for the game. At other times, it looks like they're sleepwalking. I don't really know what's with them on the defensive end. I have talked about their offensive stuff. J.J. Redick, I think he's a Danny Hurley disciple because their plays are very similar. The actions are very similar. And so I think they're doing an okay job there, but the whole defensive thing is
so it's not a coaching issue? It's kind of as LeBron goes, the rest of the team goes?
No, I just don't think they have a very good team. I said that in the beginning. You have LeBron, you have Anthony Davis. Davis is a China doll, so he can get hurt and be gone for 20 games on the clip of a finger. And so I don't necessarily think that they were that loaded to begin with. And then if you look at some of LeBron's general manager decisions, where they've just traded this guy after that guy after that guy. If they had all those pieces together right now, they'd have a better team. But he just keeps clearing people out of there, and he's the coach, general manager, and everybody else. And right now, it looks like J.J. Redick's actually trying to coach the team. It looks like he's trying to, and the NBA players, they don't want to be coached. That's why you can see guys get fired. Probably why they fired Adrian Griffith from the Milwaukee Bucks and brought in Doc Rivers, because Doc has a reputation as being a little bit more of a player's coach, and Griffin was pushing his guys, saying we got to practice, we got to come back after a road trip, and we got to go hard. And these guys are like, hey man, we're exhausted, we got to get rest, and we got to get in the training room. And that's that dynamic that you walk as a coach, especially in the NBA, with all of the other logistical stuff that goes into it, with the travel, with all of the stuff, the media appearances, all of that stuff, it all adds up. There's only 24 hours in every day, folks.
Yep.
Clippers, all right, Harden, they actually had a Kawhi Leonard sighting, Pete.
Really?
He played the other night. Yep. Sat out
he does exist.
X amount of games and came back. And you're, as an NBA coach right now, and I've said this to college basketball coaches as well, there's going to be new scrutiny here. And some of the big salaries that you're offering these gentlemen, they want to know if there's return on investment.
Yeah, people are going to expect something for their dollar.
You better, because it'll affect your product.
Yeah.
If you have one guy on your team that's making $50 million and he's not producing, you can pick up 3 other players for that, and they're going to be solid, good players. So it's something to watch, really, in the NBA. But they're on rough ground. ESPN, holy smokes, Pete! I don't know if we're going to get to talk about that, but they got something going on over there. That's like a Harlequin novel right now. So we got the Milwaukee Bucks at 18-16, the Timberwolves moving right in there, 19-17. A little bit of a baseline story with the Timberwolves. We thought they'd be a lot better than they were. That trade with the Knicks really got them bottled up. The Pacers and the Hawks are going to fill it out for our final 2 in the 15. The Hawks are playing good basketball. Here's a couple of teams you don't see in there, Pete. Golden State Warriors. You don't see them. Indiana Pacers just slid in there, but you haven't seen them most of the year. We thought they'd have a good year. So there's a couple of teams that are, surprising. Cavaliers, the Magic, a couple of others in there, and then there's some others that are surprising for their lack of success, that you thought were going to have a really good year. Everybody thinks the Lakers every year are going to be good. I don't know why. And then they looked at Golden State and saw that their roster might have been a little bit revamped, might have had some extra bodies thrown in there, but it hasn't worked for them either. And so it's interesting to watch this thing, because the NBA is really upside down right now, and the Cavaliers said, okay, we'll take it. We got a little bit of an end. We brought in our Who's Hot and Who's Not segment, but we're renaming it, Pete, to the Buster Poindexter Who's Hot segment. Okay, baby. The Cavaliers, I had to change this too. Cavaliers won 11 in a row. They are hot. When you have only 4 losses, you're going to build up some pretty good win streaks. The Pistons, Pete, firing on all Pistons. They've won 5 games, and that's like what they had at the All-Star break last year. They are now won 5 games in a row. The Pacers, aforementioned, climbing, and the reason they climbed into our Power 15 is by virtue of a 4-game win streak. The Thunder got cracked the other night by the Cavaliers, but they had a 15-game win streak prior to that game. They had 1 loss there. I'm sure they'll get back on track. That loss, the other loss, I guess they don't count them. It's weird because they lost to the Bucks in the Cup. But the Cup must be outside the regular. I have no idea, but it says they won 15 in a row, but I know they lost to the Bucks somewhere in the middle of that too. Okay, the Knicks, they won the other night, but they had lost 3 in a row. Same thing with the Heat. They won the other night, but had lost 3 in a row. They got a lot of problems over there with Jimmy Butler and trying to trade him. The Wizards, L4, and the Raptors have lost 3 in a row. The Admiral from the Spurs, David Robinson, okay? Now you go and you compare Victor Wembanyama. Probably the Spurs, throw Tim Duncan in the middle. Those are the 3 greatest big men in Spur history, probably. Okay, here's the Admiral's numbers thrown up against the big stick, Wembanyama's numbers. All right, interesting, very interesting. Points, David Robinson, 2,476. Victor Wembanyama, 2,273. Advantage, Robinson. Rebounds, 1,197 rebounds for David Robinson, 1,053 for Victor V.W. Wembanyama. Edge goes to David Robinson. Here's where I was really surprised. Blocks, 383 for Robinson, 366 for Wembanyama. David Robinson beat him in all 3 categories. NBA in the zone. I know you've been waiting for this, folks. Sitting on the edge of your seats, most likely. Bated breath. Coming out of New Year's saying, Coach, where is it? Where is your MVP tally right now in the NBA? Here it is, folks. We're going along with everybody else, but we're watching this carefully. Nikola Jokic is everybody's MVP frontrunner right now. 70% chance in Vegas of that happening. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has to be right there. And if we're counting winning, we're counting who's the MVP of a really, really great lead team in the league this year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Donovan Mitchell have to be on the top of your list. They have to be. I understand the Joker is putting up triple-double numbers, but they're not always equating to victory. And a lot of times when you see, we just had another 50-piece game. We had 60-piece. You know, they're not always showing up in wins. That doesn't always equate to winning. So Giannis is obviously right there. I love Donovan Mitchell and everything he's doing. Ja Morant with the Grizzlies. And let's throw Wembanyama in there for consideration. Not necessarily, I don't think, going to win it this year, but I could see him winning it in another year. How about your Rookie of the Year, Pete? I'm still staying with my guy, Zach Edey, on that one, although his injuries have slowed him. Bub Carrington from the Wizards, that's one of those situations where you got drafted to a really bad team, and now you're a beneficiary of that because you're playing a lot of minutes, scoring a lot of points. Bub Carrington has a chance. Jalen Wells, we gave you him last year, folks, from the Grizzlies. He's having another year. And look at the Grizzlies NBA staff there. That's a great draft. You brought in Zach Edey and you brought in Jalen Wells, and really none of those guys were high on anybody else's list. And you brought them in and surprised everybody with those picks. Great job. Ryan Dunn of the University of Virginia with the Suns. And you've got Sara and Resacher, our 2 Euro guys last year, number 1 and 2. Resacher is 10, 3, and 1.2. That's his numbers. And the other guy, Sar, is 11, 6.5, and 2.3. Sar quietly having a better year. Resacher was the number 1. I'm going to throw Dalton Connect with the Lakers in there as well. He's had some monster games. Okay, Pete. The Brooklyn Nets are up to something. And I don't know if they're up to something that's going to be good for them or something that might prove to be one of the great mistakes of all time. The Brooklyn Nets have tried to corner the draft market. They now have, in the 24-25 draft and lottery, is shaping up to be, what everybody's saying is going to be a great draft. The Nets have 15 first-round picks and 16 second-round picks over the next 7 years. They have 31 draft picks in 7 years. Going to take a really long time to see if that all works out, but they're doing something over there in Brooklyn. They're building something. It's a little difficult.
They're doing it quietly.
But it's also difficult to tell your fans, we've got draft picks 7 years from now, buy season tickets.
Danny Ainge did it.
Yeah, but his weren't 7 years out.
True.
His were more of immediate. Ainge revamped that team immediately. This is going to take forever. And right now, they're sucking swamp water in Brooklyn. They need help. I don't know what they can do. Second-round picks aren't that valuable. If you looked at our draft, how many go back and look at the actual NBA draft last year, look at In the Zone actual draft last year, look at any of the mock drafts you might have seen. Who lit it up in the second round? Who's that great second-round player that's out there right now? We gave you Trace Jackson Davis the year before. But again, you have to go back and look who's that great player drafted in the second round who's absolutely helping to turn a franchise around.
Yeah.
Not there. It's not there. We got a lot of trade talk going on in the NBA right now, Pete, and I like that stuff. I love when trades happen. Jimmy Butler on the top of that list with the Heat. He's trying to get out. Pat Riley's going to get him out, but Riley's a great executive, and he was a great coach too, but he's really been a great executive in the NBA. I don't think that he's going to just take anything to move Butler. I think he's going to take a really calculated bit of time here. And what happens is the longer you wait is the longer these championship teams who are looking for that extra piece to make them into that championship team, maybe the Knicks, maybe the Magic, maybe one of those little mid-level teams right now that's looking to take that final jump, maybe the 76ers, somebody who needs a scoring bump brings them in. But right now, Pat Riley knows the longer he waits, the more desperate those teams will become and the more they'll be willing to give up for a great player like Jimmy Butler. Bradley Beal from the Suns, I think this is the trade I've talked about the most on this show. I don't know what happened there. They traded DeAndre Ayton, brought in Beal. Beal gets hurt all the time, sat out more games in Phoenix, I think, than he's actually played. And now they're trying to trade him. And I really, seriously don't know what you're going to get in that market right there. Zion is back, Pete, but they're also trying to trade him as well. Pete, would you be so kind as to throw up our In the Zone Super 25, working on it late last night, but holy smokes, Pete, it's been rough. We got Auburn, number 1. Tennessee, Florida were both, excuse me, Tennessee and Florida were both really in that 1 and 2 slot. All right?
Yep.
Florida destroyed Tennessee the other night. Tennessee, and listen to this one, folks, they made 7 field goals with 5 minutes left in the game. They made 12 for the entire game. Florida's defense smothering them. Okay? So Tennessee was in the top. They get bumped out. Florida was in the top. They got bumped out. They had a loss. They had a bad loss, but still, you get bumped, you get a loss. So out of all of this, there are no more undefeated teams in Division I. And we, thankfully, are down to 2 of the young and winless. So let's go through it, Pete. Auburn, Janai Broome is right now National Player of the Year consideration. We have the Wooden list out right now. 25 players on the Wooden list. I hope we get to it this week. So much information. If not, we'll hold it off till next week. But I think we might be able to get through it. We'll see. Auburn, 14-1. Iowa State. I said Florida is the best backcourt in the country. The best. They're really, really solid. Very, very good. I might have got these guys at Iowa State a little bit upset, though, because Tameen Lipsey and Keshawn Gilbert are really, really good. So if you're looking at backcourts right there, you got Iowa State and you got Florida, bang, bang. That's why they're in the 2 and the 3 spot. They have great backcourts. Florida also, we talked about, they have incredible length. They have 7-footers. They got 6'11", 6'9", 6'10". Half their roster is over 6'9". So they got tremendous length. They're in there in the 3 spot. What they did to Tennessee the other night was an absolute beatdown. It was a beatdown. 30 points. Unbelievable. Oof. Duke, 13-2. I predicted this, Pete, and we're going to give you one of the predictions that we said number of years ago. Duke is going into ACC hyperspace right now. Duke is going into ACC hyperspace right now. John Shire, because you now have Mike Krzyzewski gone, Tony Bennett gone, Jim Larinaga gone. The league's coaching is really getting to a point where it's not there, and that's what Duke used to have to contend with, was the really great coaches of the ACC who might not have the same talent, but are getting their team to play at a very high level. Right now, Duke is going to ACC hyperspace. They're going to enter this league. I thought Pittsburgh, I've talked about Pittsburgh, I thought they would challenge for the ACC title this year. They went into Cameron the other day and had won there last year, so the Dukies must have had revenge on their mind. But, oh, my God, it was bad. 30-point L for Pitt. So Duke's coming, and you got to give them their due. I got them in the 4 spot. Alabama, same thing. Took a couple of those TV games early, lost them, but they've righted the ship. They're right back in there, and their schedule is really rigorous. Tennessee, I had to drop them. You know, they were number 1. But I had to drop them with that one loss all the way down because of the way the loss occurred. We've been talking about Rick Barnes out there in his gluten-free world. You know, had probably more cannolis than a lot of these power teams. You know, he stayed out of some of that mix-up. And so now it's starting to show because they got bombed the other night by Florida. Absolutely bombed, and I'm a little concerned about them. Chaz Lanier, you know, great guard, but he didn't have a great game the other night. Marquette, 14-2. This team's very solid. Cam Jones has to be a wooden consideration. This team is my surprise team, Dick of the Year. Mississippi State. I don't know why all those algorithmically challenged people are having such trouble with this. This team has length. This team has intensity. They play hard. They will dunk. They will run the floor. They will get after it. 14-1, Pete. Michigan State, 12-2. They're coming on. They're coming on. Izzo's got this team pointed in the right direction. Georgia, 13-2. Freshman Asa Newell leading the way. Coach White, this is not an easy basketball job, folks. Georgia's football program, you see how vaunted they are right now. In the past 5 years, they've been one of the best teams in the entire country. It's not easy to operate in that same vacuum. Not easy to operate in that same chamber. And Coach White now has it going, and I like him a lot. I actually recruited him when I was at Colgate, and I like him a lot as a person. Oregon, 13-2, really good team, Pete. I keep telling people they had their bumps, they've had their bruises, but this team's better than a lot of people think, and they're in the Big Ten right now. Texas A&M played without Wade Taylor the other night and had a monster win. They're 13-2. Buzz Taylor might be one of my favorite coaches in the country. Porter Moser at Oklahoma, 13-2. They've had their bumps and bruises, but they came back the other night and had a great win. Really excited about that team because that really gives us a little bit of a look at Moser, as I think, you know, what he did at Loyola with the run with Sister Jean to the Final Four, all of that great stuff. Now you're seeing him again. Again, Oklahoma, football school, not easy to get going. Georgia, football school, not easy to get going. Alabama, football school, not easy to get going. But now you see they're up and they're running. And if you're talking about an Atlantic 10 team having a $6 million budget, what do you think these guys are operating?
Yeah, exactly.
What it is basically unlimited, because you'll have your revenue side, but then you can always go outside to that other ATM, which is your collective. And if you have the right people in your collective and your revenue numbers are strong, you can just go, it's unlimited what your budget can be. That's why they said in the beginning, Boeheim, I think, was the one who said it, is this might need a salary cap. This might need some kind of capping on it to, you know, in order to prove equity. The NIL right now, I don't know who wants to get into this, but it's antitrust the way it is right now. The way the revenue share and the way the collective is set up is antitrust. It's big eats little every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Jayhawks, Pete, I don't know, man. Everybody was looking for them to be that big team, have it going, get it going. I think also, when you go to Kansas, you better be ready to play every night. because you get everybody's best game.
Yeah.
You're a target. UConn's finding that out right now. Tough loss at Villanova last night. They've got 4 losses, more than they had almost the entire year last year. Houston, 11-3, recalibrating, climbing. I think at the end of the day, Houston's a top 10 team in this, but this top 10 is really, really, really tight this year. It's broader. Last year it was a 1, 2, 3. Now you can go all the way 1 through 10, and somebody can get clipped. Illinois, love this team. 11-3, young, mercurial, but they play hard. Very, very well coached by Coach Underwood. I like them a lot. Mississippi, 13-2. Everybody has got this team algorithmically out of it. I have no idea why. Watched them the other night. Chris Beard does a good job coaching them, and they got some athletes. Michigan, 12-3. My man, Vlad Golden. He traveled from Florida Atlantic over to Michigan with Dusty May. He had a monster night the other night. Keep your eyes on him, folks, as an NBA top 15. Top 20 pick, 7 foot. He's legit. I liked him very much at Florida Atlantic. And now, the other night, he posted a 40-piece McNugget and had an unbelievable game. Unbelievable in every category, too. All right. We have Kentucky, 12-3. This is a really good 25 that we put together here. Really, really good. Because Kentucky, they've been struggling a little bit, but they're pretty good. I want to see what happens to them as they get through the next round of recruitment with Coach Pope. Because as I said, when you're talking about John Calipari, you're talking about probably the best recruiter in college basketball history. Pope is a better X's and O guy than Calipari. Probably not going to recruit the same, but you're going to have a better product on the floor. And right now, you see Calipari's team loaded with talent. They're up and down like a thermometer. Right now, they're up and down like a thermometer, especially a thermometer in Western Massachusetts. Texas Tech, 11-3. Okay, they're good. They're pretty good. They're gonna get some challenges real quick, as is everybody else. But people were questioning me on Florida, and then I showed you what they can do. They beat Tennessee, the #1 team in the country, by 30 points. Okay, Wisconsin, 12-3, very solid. Guy does a good job, Greg Gard. Probably one of the most criticized coaches in the country, and I think that's because he was a Division III coach at one time. They moved him up, and then there's always that kind of, is he good enough kind of label hanging over this guy. Done a remarkable job. Wisconsin, not an easy basketball job, folks. Utah State, 15-1. And don't mess with the Mountain West, people. They had 6 bids last year. And let me tell you something else that I'm seeing here. Plate tectonic shifting, and that's why Charlie Baker is talking about expansion. Let me explain it to you really quick, folks. Some of these teams are not going to make the NCAA because they got bumped up in their preseason schedule. They had to play a lot of games. Houston got 3 losses. Gonzaga has 4 now. Some of these teams have many more losses than they used to have. Now you're going into a conference where you're going to get beat up. And if you're not over 500 in your conference, you really shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament. Now what happens, Pete, is the mid-majors who are playing, we saw it last year, Mountain West Conference, 6 teams. 6 teams last year. The Atlantic 10 this year. Are we going to see multiple bids? Because all of the plate tectonics, as much as they're trying to control everything, it's slipping right through their fingers like grains of sand on the beach. The more you try and squeeze it and keep it in your hand, the more it's going to fall right out. Okay? This is what's going on, and I think you're going to see mid-majors benefit from this, and then they're going to get hammered with expansion. Okay, Memphis, 12-3. P.J. Haggerty should be on the Wooden Award and is. Georgetown, Thomas Sorber should be on that list as well, doing great stuff. And Ed Cooley, a lot of people said, why did he leave Providence to go to Georgetown? Well, the difference between Georgetown and Providence as an Atlantic 10 franchise is significant. And at first, Georgetown didn't want to jump into the NIL. They wanted all the money for the collection basket. The Jesuits don't want to spend that collection basket money on anybody but themselves. Now they have to start spreading it around, and they go, whoa, we're philosophically opposed to this. Then they watch their team finish last, and now they're not philosophically opposed anymore. They changed coaches, and Cooley's got them going. 12-3. That's why he changed. He's got a great situation there. I'm going to bite on this and give St. John's a little bit of room here. Our Bonnies lost the other night. Sorry to bounce them out, but I had to. But St. John's, I've been watching them. Patino's a great coach, 13-3. Let's see if they can sustain in the Big East right now, because the Big East is more pair than it has been in a while. Connecticut's not going to run away with this thing.
No.
They got lost last night to Villanova. Connecticut's not going to do the same thing they've done every single year. We'll see what happens. Right now, Marquette seems to be the one with the hammer. All right, here's our baselines, Pete. Is Duke going to hyperspace in the ACC? The recruiting, the wins. Cooper Flagg, what a dunk he had the other night. They've got a really good team, a team that can compete and go deep. But everybody else in the ACC, as you see, there's not one other team from the ACC in our poll represented in the Zone Super 25. Go check the AP, who I think does an okay job. Check Torvik, check Kempom. The ACC's in trouble. And what that prompted Coach Krzyzewski to recommend was a power basketball conference between the ACC and the Big East. I just wanted to let that sit there for a minute. And the reason that I'm letting it sit there is because the bigger you get, the more it is that you have teams in there that are invisible. You have Syracuse, Louisville, some of the greatest basketball programs in the history of our college basketball lifetimes, and they're struggling. They're nowhere near contention. You can count Syracuse out of NCAA contention right now. If things keep going the same way that they are at North Carolina, you are going to see that. That will end as far as them going into any kind of NCAA competition. And so once they start getting the fact that North Carolina is not going to be in a tournament, Syracuse isn't going to be in a tournament, a lot of these Big Ten teams and SEC and Power 5 conferences are not going to make the tournament, that's when you're going to see expansion.
Guess what? You are going to see in the tournament. Watch your screen. You're going to see this in the tournament, and that's all they care about.
It's there. I think it might have been one of the first comments I ever made when we started doing this show, Pete. How will you turn it all around when it's that well buttressed by dollars? How will you implement any effective change when the top is getting paid and everybody else is just told to play along?
Yep.
You see it all over the place right now. All over the place. Duke going to hyperspace. Again, the mid-major unexpected consequence are the mid-majors, the Atlantic 10, the Mountain West. Some of these conferences now going to benefit from the fact that, yeah, they have NIL deals, but they've loaded up their schedules with more cupcakes than you can imagine because television's not telling them who to play. If you look at some of the preseason schedules of the A-10 and the Mountain West, it ain't good, folks, but it's a survival technique over there as well. Okay? That's why they want to have this antitrust stuff expanded, I assume. Okay, the young and the winless, Pete. We're still down to 2, Canisius and Alcorn State. Thankfully, Jackson State played Alcorn State. One of them had to win, so that took one of them off there. And it's just a battle of, when that locker room has to be so bad. I mean, we won a game the other night, and we didn't play great. And I turned to my assistant coach, and I go, it feels like we lost in here, and we had won. And we're on a 5 or 6 game win streak. I could imagine what 0-14 feels like.
Right.
I can't because I have never been there, thankfully. But, man, it's got to be hard. So when we go young and winless, again, they got Canisius 353 out of a 364 cohort. I don't understand that.
Those guys have to go out there every other night or pretty much and still play.
Oh, and it becomes a potion almost. Right. You're drinking this self-fulfilling prophecy every night. Yeah. We're going to go out. We're going to start out, but then things are going to go bad, and we're going to go, okay, here it goes again. And it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy that really, really, man, and in this climate, I don't know how you get out of it. You're not going to be able to just buy players down there. You don't have the NIL. You don't have the setup. You're not just going to be able to turn it around. And when you go into the portal only, the portal ain't been that great. I'd love to see some measurements on that. But the portal at the top, where there's a couple of players moving around that are difference makers, yeah. The rest of it hasn't had a whole lot of impact. Mm-hmm. Okay. I got a couple of minutes left here. I wanted to get to the top 25 Wooden Award winners, but I did want to cruise through a couple of games that had some impact.
You have almost 10 minutes left, by the way.
Yeah, we're good. So we got Kentucky beat Florida, 106-100. Really good game. But that was Florida's sole loss. Oklahoma went into Alabama. They took their sole loss, but it was 107-79. Again, not exactly gluten-free. I know that's what the algorithm's picking up on, but what I'm talking about here, Pete, is in some of these games. I was so excited to watch some of these games, and I had to really flip around to find one that was good and competitive. Arkansas and Tennessee, Calipari brings his team in to play Rick Barnes, X's and O's versus recruitment. 76-52, Arkansas goes out. 52 points with all that talent. 52. Okay. Illinois goes for 109 and Oregon 77. That was at Oregon. This Illinois team can put up points. Oregon then comes back and beats Maryland. Derek Queen has consideration for the Wooden Award. SMU and Duke just blows them out. Welcome to the ACC, SMU, 27-point victory. You got Iowa State over Colorado by 10. St. John's goes into Creighton. Really, really good basketball game. And I want you to notice the score of what I say is really, really good basketball game, although a lot of people might not see it this way. It was 57-56. Creighton emerges victorious. San Diego State over Boise. I'm worried about Rutgers, Pete. I'm worried about Rutgers. They got those two talented freshmen, but right now you got a whole lot of shaking going on down there, and I don't know. You're going to have to see if some of these people can actually survive this. All right, here's the Wooden Award nominees out. Good list. Some of these guys I don't think belong on it, but again, it's about who's your media people. Who's your sports information people? How good a job are they doing at selling you? Ace Bailey from Rutgers. I guess he could be on this list. Hasn't really had that type of year. Has the reputation, but hasn't had the type of year. And as a freshman, I would have included some other guys here. Janai Broom from Auburn. He's the big dog right now, Pete. He's leading the pack to be the guy. Auburn's number one. He's the best player in the country right now. And it's him and Cooper Flagg, really, I think, in this Wooden race right now, because Flagg's been pretty good. Walter Clayton Jr., if he wasn't in the best backcourt in the country, he'd get a whole lot more notoriety, but he kind of blends in there with some other really great guards. But he's fantastic. Walter Clayton Jr. of Florida. R.J. Davis of North Carolina. Honestly, I think this is reputational. Hasn't had the year. Hasn't had the year. Doesn't belong on this list, if you ask me. Hunter Dickinson from Kansas. Okay. He's 23rd on this list, though. 22nd on this list. There's 25 names. He's not near the top. I've not been a big fan of his. And I know that Kansas paid a lot of money for him. You go back and say, who else was available that you might have gotten that might have been cheaper, less money, and might have had a better return on investment? Because right now, Kansas, that was supposed to be the piece that made them number one. That was supposed to be the piece that brought them to the Final Four. Hasn't happened. Eric Dixon of Villanova. He could be a player of the year candidate, although Villanova's up and down. Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma, rookie, maybe one of the best rookies compared to Cooper Flagg as well. Here's Cooper at Duke. What a dunk he had the other night, Pete. Keshawn Gilbert, Iowa State, we mentioned him, having a great year. P.J. Haggerty, Memphis, he's one of the reasons they're winning, Pete. Dylan Harper's had an amazing year. Now, I want something everybody in the zone to watch. Freshmen often, keep an eye on Flagg too, doesn't seem like it right now, but freshmen often hit the wall. They hit the wall in the middle of January. Freshmen often do it. It's a lot. And if you're playing a lot of minutes, travel, all this other stuff going on, media appearances, all of this stuff going around you, social media, got to talk to your agent, got to talk to the NBA people. It's a lot. And so right now we'll see. Keep an eye on Harper. It looks like he might be hitting the wall. Some guys run right through it. Other guys hit the wall and kind of crumple. So we'll be interested to see. Josh Hubbard from Mississippi State. Love him. He's going to be a pro. Kasparis Jaskunis from Illinois. This is the young freshman we were talking about. He's a great player. Going to be another guy probably a first-round pick. Trey Johnson from Texas. Watched him the other night. I was high on him in the beginning of the year, but this was a big competition game I saw him in the other night. It was against Auburn. And he just disappointed me a little bit. So I wasn't as high on him as I am now. Certainly not in this consideration. Cam Jones from Marquette. Oh, yeah, definitely. Holy Kalkbrenner, Pete. They got him on the list. He's having a good year. Creighton struggling a little bit, though, and we knew they would. How do you lose all of those great players that you had last year? Baylor Shearman, Trey Alexander. You lost a lot of great players, and it's tough to keep going. That's what's making what happening at Marquette that awesome, because they lost a lot too with Kolek and Iguodaro, but they're right back. They're right back. Caravan from Connecticut. He got some advice from Danny Hurley the other night. He made, at the end of the game, he might have made a tough play, didn't have the right thing going on in that Villanova game. And Danny Hurley said, well, I tell him to do exactly what I did when I came home from Maui. Take out your national championship rings, put them on a table, and play with them. And realize what great accomplishments you have in your life. Be thankful for those, and then get ready for the next game. It's good advice. Chaz Lanier from Tennessee. We'll see. Got to keep an eye on that. Ryan Nembhard from Gonzaga. They're struggling, Pete, but they lost one of their best players to injury. It's one of these things, again, you probably expended millions of dollars on this one player, hundreds of thousands of dollars, certainly, and they go out to injury. It's a lot like the NBA now. You paid for this guy, but he ain't around. You don't have him anymore. And that's what's really, because you can only expend your dollars on your roster spots. You can't now, free agency, go up and pick up another guy like the NBA can, or bring up a guy from your G League, which might be coming, Pete, right? Might be coming. An NCAA G League. Mark Sears, Maxime Reynaud from Stanford, Derek Queen, Mark Sears from Alabama, Braden Smith from Purdue. Boy, can this kid pass the ball and play. Wade Taylor IV, who's really coming on now but was injured, and that was a great win for Texas A&M. And Zakai Zegler from Tennessee. Okay, Pete, we got 3 minutes. I'm going to give you, we did the In the Zone MVP awards in the NBA. Right now, we're going to give you a couple of guys we think of that list that we just read out. Here's the guys that we think have the most value, the most chance to actually come out and get the award winner of the Wooden Award. Remember, we're coming off Zach Edey 2-time in a row award winner, so this is going to be interesting. Again, Janai Broom's in the lead. Janai Broom is in the lead, and so is Auburn. Walter Clayton Jr., I love him. Kashawn Gilbert, I love him. Cam Jones, love him. Cooper Flagg, love him. Any one of those five guys is really, really going to get great consideration here. And the second half of the year is really, really going to determine that. Rookie of the year, we got Cooper Flagg. Dylan Harper, kind of in a 1-2 right there. That'll be settled between those two, I believe. But Kasparis Jakunis from Illinois, Jeremy Fears and Jeremiah Fears, they're brothers, one from Michigan State, one from Oklahoma, both having monster years. They could get consideration for In the Zone Rookie of the Year. For our Coach of the Year, Todd Golden, University of Florida. I know there's a lot of stuff swirling around this guy, but I don't know nothing about it. And I'll wait for the determination. I'll wait for the investigation to conclude. But right now, he's got to be at the top of your list. Okay, Bruce Pearl, Auburn. Turn that plane around. Turn that plane around. They've been playing great basketball since they have. Maybe that discipline. Players are looking for that. They're looking for that discipline. Maybe that installation of it by Coach Pearl turned this team around, just like the plane. TJ Atzelberger, long-term contract extension with the Cyclones in Iowa State. He's a baseline, folks. This guy's a baseline with what he's been able to do with that program. I'm going to go with Porter Moser at Oklahoma as one of my coaches of the year. And right now, tough loss in St. Louis, but my guy Mark Schmidt deserves a little consideration here as well. The Bonnies, Mark Schmidt, coach of the year candidate. $385,000 per player, Pete, at VCU, up to $6 million annually. The A-10 has non-revenue schools. They got to go to their collective and somehow compete with that same thing. That's what we're talking about, antitrust. Folks, I don't know how it's all going to work out, but we're going to go home, say a prayer, and pray that it all comes back around, because we love the game, we love the sport, and these young men that are in it certainly deserve to be paid, but they also don't deserve this mosh pit that they're in right now as well, with the portal and everything else. It's the wild, wild west, Pete. We will not be in next week, folks. Pete's going chasing rockets, and he needs it. He needs it, folks. He's got to get out of here. He's going to Florida. Believe me, I'm going to be in his suitcase. All right? But we're going to take next week off. We'll be back the week after, and we'll have a whole lot of stuff to report on. Super 25, Power 15, right there with you on everything. You're in the zone. We'll see you in a week from now.